Hello, let me introduce you to photographer Kevin Pack. Hello, welcome to my photographer showcase. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and where you are from.
Hi, I'm Kev from Kevin Pack Photography. I'm 1/3 of the Creatives Photography team, and we operate from a small studio 10 minutes walk from Piccadilly train station in Manchester.
What sort of photography do you do?
I actually started out taking architectural photographs, and then after doing that for a few years, I also spent a couple of years taking mostly still life images. But I'm probably nowadays almost 100% just portraiture. Now, throughout my career, I've been taking photographs of cosplayers. These are people which dress up as characters from their favourite film, TV show, book, anime, comic book. But I'm probably best known for that because I've been doing it for so long. But I predominantly shoot family portraiture along with fashion, boudoir and editorial images.
Can you tell us what you shoot with?
Until a few years ago, I was almost exclusively a Canon shooter, but I decided that the cameras with the battery grip and the long lenses were getting a bit too heavy for me to take out with me just on spec in case I was going to do a shoot. So I was only ever taking them when I had a specific shot lined up and I was taking a camera to take those shots. So what I decided to do was to buy a small Fujifilm APS-C camera, mirrorless camera, and take that out with me on a daily basis. And I was pleased with the images from that, so I started using it for my location shoots. And I was even more impressed with the images I was getting then. That was from an XE1. So I decided to upgrade that to an XT1, and I started using it in the studio rather than the Canon. And I was thinking, this is getting a bit ridiculous. Why am I running two systems? I'm more than happy with the images I'm getting from the Fujifilm, so why have I still got my Canon gear? So a couple of years ago, I made the decision to sell off all the rest of my Canon gear, and now I'm exclusively shooting with Fujifilm. Currently, I mostly use in the studio and on location the Fujifilm X Pro 2, and my backup camera, which I'm currently using to video this, is a Fujifilm XE3. I just love the lenses which Fujifilm have, and the fact that they're significantly cheaper than what I was having to pay for Canon lenses is just a great added bonus to me. And I'd recommend the Fujifilm system to anyone.
Which are you? A professional, an enthusiast, or a happy snapper? And how long have you been doing photography?
I first started taking photographs and sold my first set back in the 70s when I was still at school. And I'd go around to a friend's house and use a darkroom they set up in their bathroom to develop the images. My first sale was a series of building renovation images. And I'm still taking photos and selling them now. But I wouldn't call myself a professional photographer. The majority of my income still comes from other sources, and that allows me the freedom to choose what projects I want to work on. So I don't have to shoot things I have no interest in. And I think that works better for me, because if I was having to do photography to pay the bills, I think I would lose some of my creativity and have to take images of things that I really don't have any interest in at all.
Can you show us the most recent image that you've been working on?
Obviously, we've not been able to get into the studio for quite some time. And unfortunately, I did have the coronavirus myself and had some quite serious side effects. So I've not been able to get out and do any location shoots either. So it's only recently I've been able to sit back at my desk and even look at what I've got on the computer. One of the last events I ran for Creatives Photography was organising a shoot for a film noir theme. And one of the next events I will be running, once we're back in the studio and able to run events again, will be on a cyberpunk theme. So what I've been doing is taking some of the test shots I had for film noir and looking to see what sort of processing I have in mind for when we actually do the test shots for the cyberpunk theme. So these aren't new shots, but I am just looking at a different way of processing them rather than for the film noir for the cyberpunk theme instead. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, but I can't wait to get back into the studio again and start taking some new images.
If you had to give just one piece of advice to a new photographer, what would it be?
My one piece of advice would just be to keep taking images, keep taking photos. The more photos you take, the more you'll start to understand the process and what's working and what's not working and why things are working, and you'll start developing your own style. I think it was, I'm going to butcher the name, Henri Cartier-Bresson, who once said that your first 10,000 photographs are your worst. And in many ways, I agree with that. You know, what I'm taking now is significantly different to what I was taking back in the 70s. So yeah, just keep snapping away. And, you know, that's the best way to learn, is by keep doing. It's great to go on to workshops. It's great to go on tutorials and see things on YouTube. But unless you're actually putting it into practice and doing it again and again and again, your skills don't develop. And I think that's really important.
What's your favourite piece of photographic equipment?
I'm a big fan of using off-camera flash. And over the last 3 years, I've been really impressed by the Godox AD200, which is available in the UK from Essential Photography as the Pixapro Pica 200. 3 years ago, when I first picked them up when they were just released in the UK, I did put a little video together of what you get when you buy one, and that was on my own YouTube channel. But recently I put together a little short live stream where I've gone through how I use the Godox AD200 in my own workflow on the shoot. And now I've gone from just owning one of them to owning 4 of them. And all of the accessories that I use, how I use them and why I use them. I just can't express enough how flexible they are and what a big change they can make to the way you take photographs.
If you could photograph any one person, living or dead, who would it be?
It's an interesting question, and it's one I had to think about quite a lot. There are several photographers whose work I really admire, and I would love to meet them and capture them with my own camera. But there's also lots of famous actors and people from history that I would also love to meet and photograph. In the end, I settled on Leonard Nimoy, who's most famous, and you've probably heard from him from being an actor on Star Trek. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that he was also a very keen photographer and took some rather thought-provoking images. If you ever get a chance, take a look at his book, The Full Body Project. Now, having said that, the last time I saw it for new on Amazon, it was for sale for £1,200. So maybe you want to see if you can find a copy in a library or some other way to view the contents of the book, because I don't think any of us can actually just afford to go out and buy a copy. I understand he first picked up a camera at exactly the same time I did, and I would be interested to hear his story of how he faced problems being taken seriously as a photographer because people viewed him as an actor, because he was so well known from his role on Star Trek, of which I'm a massive fanboy. I just think he would be a fascinating person to meet, and he had an interesting look, which is why he got the role in Star Trek in the first place. But the fact that he's also such a keen and good photographer as well, I think would just make it a very interesting subject.
Please tell us about some of your favourite images.
This first image is a photograph of Hannah in her cosplay as a character from How to Train Your Dragon. I'd originally arranged to meet Hannah and take her photographs in a wood as darkness was settling over the wood. But when it came to the evening and we met up, unfortunately she wasn't feeling very well, and so we had to postpone the shoot. And in fact, when we ended up shooting was the following morning, and it was about 10 o'clock, it was a bright sunlight, and she was saying, yes, right, I'm ready to shoot now. But my whole idea was based around going through the woods at night. So we found a tree just outside the hotel entrance, and I set up my lights to cancel out the ambient light and shoot it along the theme that I'd actually envisaged. And I do like the way that it actually turned out in the end. So it all worked out. But sometimes the best laid plans don't work out the way you intend them, and you have to then rethink how you're going to do it to get the shots you're looking for. The second image is a fashion shoot which took place in a very dark basement of a nightclub. I'd been given a theme to shoot to, and when I got to the nightclub, I quite liked the look of both the sofa and the neon sign and wanted to use them as my set. It might not look like it, but technically this was one of the most complicated shots I've ever taken. There was almost no ambient light in the room, with the exception of the light coming from the neon sign behind the models. But to get this shot as correct as possible in camera required the use of all four of my Pixel Pica 200 lights that I've mentioned before, along with reflectors and flags. So it was a very complicated shot to get. My third shot was taken back in 2014. I decided I wanted to do a horror-based shoot for Halloween and decided to settle on something similar to Silent Hill, if anybody's familiar with the games or the film. So I bought a couple of nurses' uniforms from the NHS supplier, and those were stained with coffee and tea. I then convinced a couple of models and a makeup artist to collaborate with me on a project and organise the shoot. When we arrived on site at the location, one of the few parts of the building was with electricity was the entranceway to the toilets. And I'd seen people going in and out to use them and thought it would work great for a scary image. The way I've taken this, you can't see the model clearly at all. All the outfits I'd bought, nor the great work from the makeup artist. But I think for a horror scene, it softened the anticipation rather than the gore, which makes something scary. And I think the shot itself really worked. I made it more grainy. I turned down the lighting to so that we did have more of a silhouette and just a few details showing through. It's interesting to note that when the model shared this image on her Facebook page, she actually lost likes because I think most people wanted to see glamorous photographs and weren't expecting to see an image like this. The final shot I've included of Kaylee is basically because it was taken at Ian's studio on one of his group events, actually 7 years ago. I just wanted to point out that if you're worried about going to group events as you don't want to end up with exactly the same shots as everyone else in the room, then an easy solution is to shoot with post-processing actually in mind when you take the shot. And that's what I did with this image. Just to point out, this isn't spot color, by the way. It is just a different processing technique. But there's some of my favorite images. But what I tend to find is that the last image I take is my favorite until I take another image, and then that one's my favorite. But looking back through my past catalogue, I'll settle on these ones.
How can people find out more about you and about your work?
You can see some of my cosplay images over at my website, which is cosplay.co.uk, and some of my regular photographs on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/kevin.pack.photography. But these days, I'm more likely to be found on the Creatives Photography Facebook page, which is facebook.com/creativesphoto, or on the Creatives Photography website, which is just creatives.photography. And if you've got any questions, you're welcome to come over there and ask me them, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can.
And finally, what do you think of iansstudio?
I've actually known Ian from before iansstudio, but I think it's the perfect size for shooting individuals and small groups. In fact, I rented it out myself before I had my own studio to shoot in. Ian is also an excellent trainer. For example, before attending Ian's Lightroom course, I favoured using just Bridge and doing my processing in Photoshop. But now I do almost all of my workflow, bar some small alterations, actually in Lightroom itself. And that's all thanks to learning how to properly use it from Ian. So if you can get along to one of his events, do. I really highly recommend them.
My thanks to Kevin for taking part in this photography showcase. Do make sure you check out his website and the other links which are recorded down below in the description to this video. For more hints and tips on how to improve your photography, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification. I've got other videos which will also help you improve, and those are on the screen now. Thanks for watching and keep making great photos. Bye for now.